What is up, everyone? Hope everybody's having a good day today. I'm trying to stream to Streamer TV. I don't know if it's working, but I think it might be, guys. I think it might be. We'll see. Um, Let me know if you guys have a chance to get on streamer.tv. Let me know if you can see my live stream on there. So pretty exciting stuff. Decentralized streaming platform, guys. Today, I'm going to be covering my top 5 DePIN projects that have yet to have their token launches, but they are coming this year. Some of them very soon. Some will be in Q3, but very exciting stuff there. And this is DePIN week, by the way. I'm going to be covering several other DePIN projects in the next couple of days. Very excited about that. There's a ton of projects that are building right now, regardless of market conditions. Man, things are looking pretty good, at least from a fundamentals standpoint in the DePIN space. Man, it is Monday, June 23rd. Hard to believe. I think it's like my 27th episode, guys. It's pretty exciting stuff. We are making things happen. Before I get into the DePIN projects and really dive into those 5 that I'm going to cover today, I do want to cover real quickly the newest with the Iran situation because it is having its impact on markets, maybe not in the way that people would have expected. Also, we're going to talk about some changes to our banking system that are expected to come probably in the next few weeks, maybe sooner, and how that could also have its impact on markets. We're going to cover it all today, but let's just dig in. By the way, if you're here, definitely comments. Love interacting with everyone. We had a great turnout yesterday, by the way. I think we had a couple hundred people in here at one time. Pretty good stuff there. All right. Iran. So there were some reports that Trump was growing concern about Iran retaliating on our different military stations around the Middle East. Obviously, I covered this yesterday. We attacked 3 of their nuclear facilities. So they're to the point where there's actually a shelter-in-place order. I'm going to play this for you guys in Qatar. Well, let me pull this up for you guys real quick. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go.
Iran. Have you heard from anyone in Iran, and are you expecting retaliation?
Well, if they retaliate, it'll be the worst mistake they've ever made. Look, we can fly in and out of Iran at will. We went in last night. The president sent our military forces from halfway across the world, went in, conducted this operation, left. Not a shot was fired against us. They didn't even know what had happened. By the time we left, the planes were out of their airspace before they finally started realizing they'd been hit. So it would be a terrible mistake if Iran retaliates. But that's not our goal. We are not declaring war on Iran. We're not looking for war on Iran. But if they attack us, then I think we have capabilities they haven't even seen yet. It would be a terrible mistake on their part. And frankly, it's not what we hope for or wish. What we want now is to ensure that Iran never has nuclear weapons. If what they want is a civil nuclear program where they have power plants like a lot of other countries in the world have, they can do that. That's the deal that's been offered to them.
All right. And then Trump had this to say as well about any attacks on us if they were to retaliate. And then I'm going to take you to the newest because there have been some retaliations. But let me play this.
Late last night, President Trump issued his own stern warning to Iran.
There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill.
All right. So the newest, and here's what's happening as we speak. There's actually some new developments like in the last 30 seconds. But earlier today, Qatar closed their airspace, and there were shelter-in-place orders put in place as well.
Qatar's foreign minister now has just announced it is shutting down its airspace to all commercial flights indefinitely. And we know just a few minutes ago that the U.S. issued a shelter-in-place order for Americans in Qatar. What does all of this tell you?
Well, there's very significant intelligence and a warning that Iran could strike at any time, an imminent threat to Qatar. Of course, Qatar is where Al Udeid is. That's the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East. Normally, there would be 10,000 U.S. troops stationed there. Last week, we reported that most of the aircraft had been moved from Al Udeid. However, those missiles, cruise and ballistic, short and medium range from Iran would take just a few minutes to reach Qatar. And there's also the possibility of swarming drones. So,
Okay. So as it turns out, they did attack. Okay. So that was earlier this morning. We see here they did attack. And what's interesting is that if we look at oil prices, they've actually gone down, which is not what you would probably expect if there was this type of retaliation. But we're seeing here, we were at, let's see, we got up earlier today above $74. We're down now to $69 following this retaliation from Iran. And the question is like, why? Why is that the case? Well, there's different thoughts behind this. Number one is that Iran, this article here says that they matched the number of bombs signaling the desire to de-escalate. And you scroll down here a little bit. It says, we neither initiate war nor are seeking it, but we will not leave invasion to Great Iran without answer. There's also reports that while this appears like an escalation, one diplomat, let me pull over here. While this appears to be an escalation, one diplomat in the Gulf said this is clearly orchestrated and designed to give everyone a way out. Okay, there's evidence that supports this. They gave a heads up. So obviously we knew that this attack was coming. We were able to close the airspace. All the missiles were intercepted. There were no casualties. And this actually does align with a video I was trying to find before the live stream where Trump was talking about in his last presidency. There's a similar scenario where Iran did fire some missiles at U.S. bases, but gave us a heads up and basically said, look, we need to, from an optic standpoint, show force, essentially. We can't just lay over. And from the global perspective, we have to show that we are, showing force, but at the same time, it's really just for optics reasons. And this is what a lot of people think is happening here is that, we attack them. They have to show something in response, but they did it in a way that it wasn't going to result in any casualties. So very interesting if that is the case. And that is obviously the market is pricing in de-escalation, whether that's the reason or whether people realize, hey, the U.S. has the weapons that they can put a quick end to this. Regardless, the markets are showing that they're expecting a quick resolution here. So it is unclear why that is, but it is what the markets are showing. Now, I did say that there was an attack of like a minute ago as I was coming on that apparently Israel just sent a whole bunch of missiles over at Iran. So we'll see. I'm going to come back to the oil prices here at the end of the stream here. We're going to see how much oil prices move. But again, this is what we're sitting at right now is 69.30. So it's starting to tick up a little bit. So we'll see if the markets all of a sudden are no longer pricing in de-escalation with this most recent attack from Israel, which seems to now be re-escalating things. So again, we'll come back to this at the end of the stream. It'll be interesting to see where oil prices go. But that is going to fully indicate what the markets are expecting as far as a resolution goes. The other thing I want to touch on before we get into the DePIN stuff, and hold on, let me see what the comments. Nice hat. Thanks, man. I got this at Bitcoin 2025. Let's go. Business as usual, right? Man, I know, man. I know. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. Let's hope that things de-escalate. Okay. I want to pull up a couple things on the macro real quick, and then we are going to get into the crypto news. And really, more specifically, I'm going to break down the 5 DePIN projects that have yet to launch their tokens, my top 5 DePIN projects that are pre-TGE token generation event. All right, let's pull up this clip from Ray Dalio. So you don't know who he is. He is a billionaire. Where are we at? There we go. Thought this was a really interesting take on our current debt situation. And I'm going to talk about some things that are coming as far as deregulation in our banking industry. I think that's going to help us deal with this.
Service payments. Right now, for example, for the government, we are operating with a $7 trillion spending and a $5 trillion intake each year. Okay, we're spending 40% more than we're taking in, and this is a chronic problem. So what you're seeing is the debt service payments beginning to squeeze away, not beginning, well into squeezing away. So it's like plaque in the arteries, squeezing away buying power. And as you can do the numbers, you will see that you can have an economic heart attack as a result of that, that we're going to very soon get to the position that you need debt to pay the debt. Think about it this way.
That's crazy.
Okay. Think about the fact that there's $1 trillion in interest, $9 trillion of debt that's coming due. So you have to sell that again. That's $10 trillion plus $2 trillion of new borrowing. That's $12 trillion that you have to sell in terms of the markets. So the second big influence is the supply demand influence. By knowing really how much has to be sold and who the buyers are and the likelihood of that amount being bought, one can calculate the imbalance. That's a problem. And so if you even then start to get selling of that debt, because debt is not a good thing to be owning, not just because of the worry about default, but the worry about monetization. Central banks having to come in there and print money to buy it. The value is the value of holding that money. That dynamic is, we are at this inflection point that will be coming upon us soon.
Yeah, the word.
Yeah. Okay. This is exactly what we've been talking about a lot recently. This is bad, obviously. He mentioned the $9 trillion in debt that's coming due over the next 12 months. We also have, $7 trillion in spending versus $5 trillion in tax revenues. So $2 trillion deficit on an annual basis. And then you add $1 trillion in interest payments, coming to a grand total of $12 trillion of debt that needs to be financed over the next year. Not good, guys. Not good. And one of the big problems is that. Okay, I'll pull up your comments in a second, guys, about the B. But one of the big problems here is this 10-year Treasury rate and the lack of buyers for this debt. And basically it's more or less a runaway train at this point. How can we get our deficit under control? Well, it makes it a lot more difficult when you have really high interest payments, when you have $1 trillion a year in interest payments. But there obviously is a big problem, I think, both in the amount of tax revenue we're getting, which I think, well, maybe not everyone agrees, but I think the ultra rich could be paying more taxes. But at the same time, I think we need to cut spending. And I think it has to be both. Unfortunately, most presidents, because that would be very unpopular, are not going to go that route. And if we don't, I think that is going to be major trouble for us. Now, who can we get to buy our debt? Because, Japan used to be one of our biggest buyers. They don't seem to be taking more on. China has been reducing the amount of debt that they're holding, U.S. debt they're holding. You have the UK now has overtaken China, but with $12 trillion coming due in the next year, what can we do? Well, a couple of things that I've been talking about. I'm going to play this clip from Scott Bessent, and I think one of these we're going to see a lot more in the news in the coming weeks, and it's about our banking system and some changes that are coming there. So let me share this real quick. Play this clip for you guys.
Something different, but I think might be related, which is stablecoin. If really we went big into stablecoin in this country, what effect could that have on the strength of the dollar? Because people might have to hold dollars in order to match against it, or even for treasuries.
Well, we are going big on digital assets. So Trump administration has made digital assets a priority. Past administration starved and almost made extinct a lot of these companies and pushed it offshore. So what we want to do is apply the highest U.S. regulatory and AML standards to digital assets, especially stable coins. And I've seen estimates that just over the short term, stable coins could create $2 trillion of demand for U.S. treasuries and treasury bills. To put that in context, the number's probably about 300 billion right now.
Boom. So stablecoin, we talked about that quite a bit. There's something else here.
Let me ask something different, but I think might be related, which is stablecoin.
Stablecoin. Hold on, where are we at here? Maybe this is it.
But sorry, and knowing the markets as you do, would you anticipate that might have a significant material effect on Treasury yields?
Well,
Oh, here it is.
One form of regulation that gets a lot
There
of
it
attention
is.
in New York and on Wall Street is banking regulation. Let's talk about the supplemental leverage ratio, which seems like an obscure thing off to the side, but it has been the subject of much discussion. And it does, as I understand it, relate to U.S. Treasuries and yields on U.S. Treasuries, so that if major banks held more U.S. Treasuries, it would bring yields down. You've said you're going to take more of an active role, as I understand it, with respect to some of that banking regulation. Where are we with that?
I think we are very close to moving the supplementary leverage ratio, SLR. That is moving along very quickly between the three banking regulators, the Fed, the OCC, and the FDIC. So I would think we could see something on that over the summer.
Over the summer, and knowing the markets as you do, would you anticipate that might have a significant material effect on Treasury yields?
Well, I think it could, because banks are being penalized for holding treasuries. There's a large supplementary leverage charge. So I think for holding the risk-free asset, we can reduce that. And I've seen estimates that it could bring yields down by tens of basis points. Certainly during the COVID crisis, it was temporarily taken off, and it had a big effect.
Boom. Okay. So this SLR is going to become a really big deal. This leverage ratio that our banks are held to. Essentially, the way it's structured today, if our banks hold too many treasuries, it works against them, and it discourages our banks from holding more treasuries. By contrast, if they exempt treasury securities, which, as Besson said, is looked at as a risk-free asset, it would allow our banks to hold more treasuries and create demand for treasuries. It's a really big deal. So again, $2 trillion from stablecoin issuers, that's a big deal. If we're looking for someone to buy up our debt and finance our debt. Then the next big thing that's coming, and he said it's coming this summer. Okay, so I would expect this to be something that happens pretty soon here. And that is, our banks are going to be able to buy up and hold our debt. And that's a big deal, because this 10-year treasury needs to come down for a number of reasons. Okay, so this 10-year treasury is a really big deal, guys. For one, $12 trillion of debt. If we can drop this yield down, that's going to save us a ton of money on interest payments on our debt looking forward. It's going to make it easier to try to balance the budget, assuming that's possible. But it's certainly going to help. Those interest payments are a killer. The other thing that people need to realize, though, is that as this yield goes up, it really makes it difficult for companies and businesses to borrow, makes it harder for them to hire people. It also, you look at out of like the 30-year treasury rate, the mortgage industry, the real estate industry is at a standstill right now. We need rates to come down. All of this that we're talking about, the deregulation of our banking sector, the stablecoin issuers, they're going to help bring those borrowing costs down, which should help stimulate the economy, as well as reduce the interest we're paying on our debt. So I would expect the SLR is going to be something you watch. You're going to see it on X. Everyone's going to be an SLR expert in like 2 weeks. I'm by no means an expert, but it's funny how that works. Whatever I guess like a month ago, the reverse Japan carry trade. Yeah, you're going to see SLR experts everywhere pretty soon here. Mark my words on that. All right, we're going to talk about some crypto here. But before we get into that, let's look at some comments. Nice hat. I reread that one. What's up, Justin? Justin's good people. Someone said, who are these white people? That was Scott Bessent. That's the Treasury Secretary, the guy that's kind of holding everything together right now. That, frankly, if it weren't for him, I'm not sure that we would have made it this far with all the tariffs in place without a major drop in markets. Obviously, we saw a couple, but we mostly rebounded from those. But Scott Bessent, we trust. I think he's one of the few people right now that has a pretty high approval rating in the cabinet. My B doesn't earn squat. It's a reference, guys, to Hive Mapper. So the new B model, there's some complaints right now I'm seeing that the old HDC is out earning the Bs. There's an issue with how they're getting rewarded. And Ariel has responded. He seems to be on top of it. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Even Shayna. Oh, Shayna, is that the new person from our Discord group? I assume that's who that is. All right, guys, let's look at Bitcoin. And then we're going to get into the DePIN projects. One of you guys just mentioned one of them that I'm going to be covering today. Here we go. Bitcoin back up to 103, y'all. It got dropped down to below 100 in the last 24 hours. There's a lot of people that were calling for us to get back down to 90K. I see some people talking about 70K. A lot of different numbers being thrown out there. People are getting pretty bearish. And there's a lot of people right now that are saying that this is frankly, just a short squeeze. I think it is more an element, frankly, of oil prices coming down, which is, I think, a shock to a lot of people. But 103,000, pretty crazy to see this much resilience with everything going on right now, I have to say. Let's take a look at the market as a whole. Ooh. Okay, when I looked at this an hour ago, it was all red. So we are seeing the tides turn in real time. Again, I think a lot of that is the response to the market around the Iran situation. Guys, the oil prices I'm looking at right now are down even further. So I believe the market is definitely expecting a quick resolution here. So that's good. That's a good thing for sure. We're seeing things turn. I think we're going to see if this continues, we could see some shorts get wrecked here. We'll see what happens. But things can change in a second. You have to be really, really careful in this market right now with the amount of uncertainty out there. One thing I wanted to call out, by the way, Andy and Friends. So he's also, his main account's your friend Andy. Check this out. I did an interview. There's a bunch of us on there. William's on there. Chris is on there. We talked DePIN for over an hour with Andy. Andy's really bullish on DePIN, by the way, and he's got a pretty good following. I think on his main account, he's got 140,000 subscribers. So definitely go and subscribe to Andy. He knows his stuff. We had a really good discussion when we were out in Vegas about DePIN. I think he had a really solid take earlier today. It's kind of what I've been talking about a little bit, but he said the harsh truth: those who don't lose hope when the market sucks and who keep grinding away are the ones who reap the rewards when the mega crypto bull run arrives. So give up and complain, or put your head down and get to work. Your choice. I think that's so true, man. And we are seeing the negativity reach new all-time highs. It makes sense. We've seen altcoins get absolutely demolished, particularly since December. It's really hard to look at the fundamentals, and it can be hard to stay positive when you have this much red in the markets. But I think, for a lot of us, I think we see what's happening with DePIN. And I do believe that right now the fundamentals are stronger than they've ever been, with the amount of teams that are really building. So a lot of smart people are in the space, real revenue being driven. And that's what we're going to talk about next. That's what we're talking about next. We've got some DePIN haters in here. It's all right. It's all right. I think you guys will be proven wrong at some point. Bob said, love Andy. Yeah, Andy's awesome. He is a good, genuine person, I must say. Really enjoyed being able to do that interview with him. He's a really nice guy. Nicholas says he's here because of the interview. Nice. Love that. Love that. And he was wearing a DeEEP hat. We might be talking about DeEEP actually today. Joe is always spicy. Joe is always spicy. All right. What do you guys think the first project is going to be? Let's open it here. Guys, it is Wingbits. Wingbits. So it's a flight tracking network. So let me explain how flights are tracked today, because this has certainly changed in the last few years. Looks like someone's got their devices up and running. Love that. That's freaking awesome, man. Wingbits is a really solid project, guys. So it used to be that flights were tracked strictly by radar, and you kind of have this blip on the system. You didn't have a whole lot of details around where flights were. Now they have something called ADS-B. It's called Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. So let me show you how this works essentially. But you have this digital snapshot of a plane now where it sends out a signal using its onboard tools. So you have precise location data, you have the velocity, aircraft ID, just a ton more data than just radar. But the problem is you have to have something that collects that data at the ground. And that is what Wingbits is building out. Essentially, you have these antennas you can set up on your roof, and you can capture this data from the airplanes. And what they're doing is they're getting these things all over the world deployed. So if you look at the map here, you can see all the flights that are being tracked. It's pretty cool stuff. You can click on a specific aircraft. You can see what type of aircraft it is. So for people that are flight geeks, you could certainly have a lot of fun on here looking at different flights. If you live next to an airport, it'd be kind of fun to watch the flight come in and see what flight is coming. Yeah, a ton of airplanes. And it's not just the US, guys. It's all over the world. All over the world. So to this point, it's really interesting. The way that these flight tracking networks have worked is mostly hobbyists. You have these entities, these centralized entities that make a ton of revenue. And then they basically have flight enthusiasts all over the world. They send equipment to that set up these devices. They don't get paid anything. They just get free access to the flight tracking software. And again, they're kind of like flight nerds. They like to watch it. They think it's fun. And, the centralized entities getting all the revenue and all the real benefit as far as monetization goes. The problem with that is when you just have hobbyists running these different hotspots or these antennas, you have problems with uptime. They don't really have an incentive to optimize their setup and make sure they're getting good data. And what Wingbits is doing is essentially using a token incentive model. They're flipping the script here. They're getting people to deploy these all over the world. They get tokens, so they get ownership in the protocol, and they're incentivized to have an optimized setup and have better coverage and have better uptime. Because the token incentive model is tied to the more value you bring to the network. So their goal is to get better data. And that is what they're well on track to do. Now, the other thing I'll say is that they launched a satellite into space. Let me pull this up real quick. So this was earlier this year. They actually launched a satellite. And the main reason is to fill in the gaps. Because you have to think, if we look at this map here, it's great if you have all these antennas collecting data here, but what about when their flights are over the ocean? It's hard to get really good data because these antennas can, they have pretty good coverage, but they can't span that far. So that's a big reason why they launched this satellite, is to kind of fill in the gaps, particularly in areas where you don't have good coverage from the ground level. So they're certainly making moves. And I will say one of the things that makes me really, really bullish on this project is that they teamed up with GeoNet. GeoNet, I'm not going to cover today. I will be covering it in the next couple of days, though. Obviously, one of my favorite projects. But Mike Horton, who is the CEO of GeoNet, is also partnered with Wingbits to where you can actually get a dual mining hotspot. So you can actually get both GeoD tokens and Wingbits tokens. Actually, the Wingbits network uses the GeoNet network to verify location data so you don't have spoofing. So pretty cool synergy there. But the other thing I'll say there is, Mike Horton has proven to be very effective with GeoNet. And it's arguably one of the, if not the most successful DePIN project right now. He has a vested interest in getting Wingbits to succeed. So having that type of lever and being able to rely on the expertise when needed for Mike Horton, I think is a really big win for this project. And that is the reason why I really like it. And my channel, by the way, if you don't subscribe, you should, but I create a playlist so you can see for Wingbits. If you click on full playlist, I have an overview video. It's just under 8 minutes. I also interviewed their CEO and founder, Robin, and then I also did a video on their tokenomics. So if you want to learn more about the project, check it out. Question, do they have a token? They don't have a token yet. Actually, so all 5 projects that I'm covering today have not had TGE. They have not had their token generation event yet, but they are all launching tokens this year. So that's the main point of the show today is I'm going to be covering all 5 of these projects. They don't have tokens yet. That's really where you want to be in these projects. If you want to get in early, generally, just like any company or project, if you're an early investor, generally you have more risk because the project or company isn't established. You're normally going to get better returns, assuming they execute and do well. But I do believe that Wingbits has a bright future ahead. Dual mining, how much does it cost to buy a device with $150? Joe's such a hater. Jeez, buddy. It's not a huge antenna. I think it looks very similar to the Wingbits equipment that's already there today. I don't think it's much different, but it does allow you to participate in both networks. So definitely want to check out, guys. I think Wingbits. I think when I spoke with them before, they were planning on having their TGE in Q2. So we'll see what happens there. All right. The next project, guys, is 375 AI. The shirt I'm wearing. How about that? I know there's probably some 375 AI fans in here, and I am a huge fan of 375 AI and what they're doing. So they're basically collecting data at the edge, and they're processing that data using NVIDIA chips. So for one, and I'm going to show you all the different hardware that they have and what they're doing exactly. But I have to say, their CEO, this guy, Harry Dewhurst, this dude is a very, very well accomplished individual. He is in his late 30s. He was on Forbes 30 under 30. If you look down here, he was the CEO for 2 years of Linksys. Let's go down here. Very young CEO, I might add, to be a CEO of a company of that nature. His first company that he co-founded, I think, sold for like somewhere in the range of like $380 million, something like that. Absolutely insane. The guy is very, very smart and knows how to execute, obviously. Now, one of the things in particular that's really attractive about this group is that they have a exclusive partnership with this company, Outfront Media. It has 50,000 billboards across the country. And what they're doing is they're collecting data. And this is a staggering fact, by the way. There's roughly, I think it's close to 80% of commerce is still done offline, right? So actually, people going into like brick and mortar and shopping in that way. Now, we've done a really good job of collecting data on people's online shopping habits, but there's still a huge miss when it comes to collecting data for people actually doing physical shopping. And this is what they're trying to address in many ways. So one of their hardware models is this the Edge, 375 Edge. They've already deployed a lot of these across LA. They've also deployed them in some other major cities. They're expanding right now. The way this works, essentially on these billboards, they're setting up 6 cameras. They've got NVIDIA chips right there, and they're able to process all this data at the edge. So pretty cool stuff. It allows them to basically look at all vehicles that are going past. They can see how many people are in vehicles. They can see license plates. They can detect all this in real time. And there's a huge need for this. I mean, public safety, obviously, you like Amber Alerts, that sort of thing. But also, you look at hedge funds. Hedge funds are always looking to get more data and get an edge. This is a data set they haven't had before. In the past, they bought satellite imagery to see like how many cars are in a parking lot. But this type of data has not been something that's existed at a large scale that's really had all the edge processing done. So it's really valuable in real time. So massive project being built out here. Now this hardware comes at a price of $50,000. So obviously it's out of a lot of people's price range, but they are going to be offering the ability to actually buy parts of this equipment. So you could invest $1,000, let's say, and you get basically 2% ownership in that hardware at the edge. They're making it a lot easier for people to invest, but they're also launching a version that's going to help them fill in the gaps at the edge. So you have it's called the 375 Street. So it's going to come at a price tag. Don't quote me on this, but I want to say probably around $1,200. Has 2 cameras, also has processing at the edge. But this is for people that, instead of having it deployed for you, maybe you want to deploy it on your own. Maybe you live in an area that has decent traffic, but it doesn't make sense to put a $50,000 unit. Well, in this case, you can set up your own cameras and participate that way and earn tokens. So if you are really into getting your hands dirty and wanting to, deploy your own cameras, you can do so. So pretty cool stuff there. Nate Harper in the house. What's up, sir? He said, damn. Maybe I'll buy one and sell some shares. I have to say, I think this is a really cool project. I think that when you consider the type of data they're gathering, there's going to be a lot of use cases for it and a lot of demand for it that I don't think people even are scratching the surface on yet. I think there's going to be a lot of really large future use cases. The other thing I'll say, though, is that you can actually participate for free today using their 375 Go app. They have tremendous coverage already. But this is actually gathering data on network connectivity, network speeds, etc. And I will say, Harry, in a prior life, utilized and sold a lot of data that's very much in line with the data they're collecting here. And they have collected a lot of data using this products already. I forget where the map is for that, but they have people that have mapped hexes all over the world. I mean, it's pretty remarkable what they've been able to do. But I do think, they're doing things right in a lot of ways. They have really good leadership. They're collecting really valuable data, of course. But on the other end, they have ways to participate for everyone. They have a free app you can participate with. They have, if you are the type of person that wants to deploy the hardware yourself, they have that option coming. And then if you're hands off, well, you can invest in their edge and you can do fractional ownership. So I think really smart the way they're going about it. I also have an interview with their CEO I posted a couple weeks ago. Highly recommend checking that out. In fact, I'll show you what some of this looks like. Look at this stuff. They're getting every vehicle. They have IDs for every vehicle. You can see how many passengers are in each vehicle. Pretty remarkable stuff. And I do believe that project has a lot of legs. They are expecting to have their token launch in Q3. So certainly want to keep an eye out for, but you can download the app today and start participating in earning tokens before the launch. So it's a little spooky. It is a little bit Big Brother, isn't it? But hey, somebody's going to do it. There's no doubt about it. Somebody's going to end up doing it. So why not be an early investor in a project that is going to capture that data set? I mean, I think I think that project's going to do really well. And again, I have the utmost confidence in their leadership. The team is so important right now, especially when market conditions are poor like it is right now. You really, really have to have a team that can execute. And you want a team that's committed. So really, really important stuff there, guys. All right. There's been some mentions about this one, guys. Let's go. Let's see. What's Nate Harper? I assume that's Nate Harper from DeEEP, but I'm not sure if that's the same Nate Harper or not. I don't know. But that is the next project we're going to cover, is the DeEEP Network. Really big fan of this project, guys. It's a decentralized node network. Now, there are a lot of these projects out there. So the question is it is Nate Harper. Nice. Nate Harper is one of the co-founders of the DeEEP Network. So appreciate you coming in today, man. DeEEP Network, guys. There are decentralized node networks out there, but DeEEP is differentiated. I'm going to talk about why here, but just kind of the overall basis here. When you look at the other options that are available, You have your Amazon Web Services, you have your centralized entities for cloud services. Well, I think we've seen enough instances in recent history where you see outages, you see data leaks, incredibly costly. Not to mention, you have generally really inflexible contract terms. They charge an arm and a leg. There's a lot of problems with centralization. Well, DeEEP is fixing that with their node. And I would highly recommend taking a look at their hardware. Right now, they've sold out all their batches. And you can join the wait list for when the next batch opens. But essentially, it's plug and play, guys. Super easy to set up. Incredibly easy to set up, actually. When they say plug and play, it's plug and play, guys. Like, there are some workloads where you have to, open some ports if you want to participate in hosting some of the workloads and getting full rewards. But guys, it is about as easy to set up as it gets. Now, here's an example. Now, this is not a guarantee for what your income would be off of this, but you would basically plug in this device in a decentralized manner. They're hosting these different workloads. So the left is some example workloads. And then you get roughly 50% of the revenue that's generated. You also earn DeEEP tokens for participating. So a pretty cool model. Now, one of the questions I always have about these is, where's the demand going to come from? Because I think you see a lot of these projects where you have really smart people that are building out the network, but there's no demand and no revenue coming in. And that's one of the big problems I've always had with these networks. And there's plenty of examples there. I'm not going to call any of them out by name right now, but that is one of the things I really like about this project, because this group already had a company called NerdNode. And they already had a ton of workloads on the network. So what they had done is they set up a centralized service, brought a bunch of revenue in, brought a bunch of workloads on, and now they've created this decentralized network to start moving those workloads over to. And this is a really good example of a project that already has revenue before the token launch. I love it. I think we're going to see more projects do this. And I think that's a winning scenario, because it buys you more time. These projects that are launching tokens years before they have any revenue, you have a market downturn. It makes it really difficult for them to keep getting investment and keep things running. In this case, they're already going to be showing revenue. And looking at their team, Ben and Chris, these guys, this team, by the way, is phenomenal. But Ben and Chris, they worked in the IoT world. In fact, they had a contract with McDonald's where I believe they had 6 IoT devices in every McDonald's. Okay, so they know the business side of things. They know how to bring in revenue. That is so critically important. Then you have, Nate Harper, who, by the way, I did an interview with. Check it out. The co-founder, one of the co-founders of DeEEP Network. So we get into all the nitty-gritty details that you need to know. A couple other things worth mentioning, guys. They didn't have to decentralize this network. They were making plenty of money with NerdNode, but they believe in decentralization and moving the market forward in a decentralized way. I think in the long term, it's going to be a big win for them. But keep in mind, they're now splitting the revenue 50-50 by doing this. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it's going to be a much better move. The other thing I want to point out is, compared to a lot of other projects that will just continue selling hardware, guys, they're only expanding the network to make sure they're matching supply and demand. So they don't want to sell more hardware than they have demand for. And that is why they're doing these batches. I think that says a lot about the team, because this is you're seeing this with a lot of DePIN projects where they're just going to keep selling hardware where there's no clear path to revenue. And that is not a sustainable business model. And that's one of the biggest red flags, in my opinion, in DePIN right now to look out for, is projects that are really focused on selling hardware, not focused enough on actually driving revenue. And obviously, I think it's one thing to say it. It's one thing to put your money where your mouth is, and they're doing it. They could be selling a lot more hardware, and they are certainly throttling the speed of growth on the supply side to match the demand side. I really like what they're doing here. So check it out, guys. DeEEP Network. Go ahead and sign up for the wait list. But highly recommend taking a look at this project. We don't know when the network or the TGE is going to be. I think, if I were to guess, Q3. I don't know. We'll see. But again, huge fan of DeEEP Network. Ooh, someone said Dabba. I know we have some people in here that are Dabba haters. It's okay. but it is. Here's the project that I'm going to talk about next. Another project that has not had their TGE yet. What is Dabba doing? Well, for one, look at the backers they have: Multicoin Capital, Borderless. Obviously, some pretty decent backers there, but they are bringing. Nate said, "Thanks for the shout out, Brett." Of course, man. I love what you guys are doing. I'm here to help spread the word about projects that have real teams and real revenue, man. Now, that's not to say if I don't cover a project, it's not to say that I don't believe in it. Some of them just I haven't had the chance to do adequate research on, so I'm not going to cover them. Some I have looked at, and there's red flags. I just don't cover them. I found that in this space, Joe might feel differently, but I found in this space, if I have negative sentiment about a project, it's better just not to cover it at all. But some people like to get negative on projects. It's up to you. But I find that it's not really a whole lot of winning there. So I'd rather just not cover it at all. But if I am covering a project, it's because I personally have invested in it. Doesn't mean you should. My risk tolerance is likely very different than other people's. Everyone needs to make their own decision on what to invest in. But I personally don't cover a project unless I have done my research and I am personally investing in it. Okay, Dabba Network, they're bringing Wi-Fi to India. So pretty wild stuff. 1.4 billion people in the Indian population, 70% of which are under the age of 35, very young population, very different than most of the demographics of other countries today. What's pretty wild, though, is only 50%, roughly 50 to 60%, have access to internet connectivity. The vast majority of those people are using cellular networks. So they kind of surpassed Wi-Fi infrastructure altogether and just moved straight to using cellular plans. The big problem now is that the telecoms are having trouble keeping up with the demand. They're finding that in India, the growth in bandwidth usage is expanding faster than anywhere else in the world. And the Wi-Fi infrastructure only covers about 5% of the population. So Dabba is set out to fix that problem. Now, when you look at India, really there's internet coming in from the ocean into two different areas on both sides of the country. And to this point, the Indian government has really run the show as far as trying to get broadband infrastructure across the country. They've been working on this for the better part of like 30 years. They've done a really good job of getting internet infrastructure built underneath the highways and the railroads in pretty much the edge of the towns and cities. But the last mile has been where the big problem is. It's very tedious and very costly to bury cables and bring them to different buildings and different infrastructure within these towns and cities. And that's kind of where things have gotten held up and where the bottleneck has been. And that's where Dabba is essentially, flipping the script here. They're working with these what are called LCOs or local cable operators in India. For let's say a town of 200 or 300 people, there's a person and they're called a local cable operator that they started these smaller businesses for their town, and they have built it around setting up satellite TV for the 200-300 people in their local community. And it was a really good business plan for a while, but the problem has been that just like most areas of the world, people are looking to cut the cord, cut the cable, and move to streaming services. So they're actually leveraging these partnerships with these LCOs to help them shift their business model to now building out Wi-Fi infrastructure. They also have the backing of the Indian government. They help the Indian government write up their telecom policy. So they have the backing from the government, which is obviously a huge win as well. So I think Haram, who's their CEO, frames it pretty well here. There's 150,000 of these LCOs, these local cable operators that need to shift their business model. There's roughly 750 million underserved users that don't have access to Wi-Fi or broadband. And there's extreme cost sensitivity. If you look at the average income of people in India, it's quite low. So using the DePIN model, essentially, you can invest in the infrastructure. This is a model I think we're going to see more and more of where they manage the install for you. WeatherXM is doing a similar scenario right now, where they are allowing you to invest in the the weather stations. They're getting deployed in the countries where it's needed. This is really going to be huge in matching supply and demand. So this is a big deal. Now, if you look at Dabba, they've sold a total of 13,000 hotspots. They've now installed 5,187 of those. So this number is ticking up. I've been keeping a close eye on it. They've already had over 12,000 terabytes of data over the network. So they're only installing these where they're getting usage. It's also worth noting that they just brought on 8 more LCOs and they're expanding now. So they kind of at the beginning brought on a few LCOs that they felt really comfortable with to start getting these hotspots deployed. Now they are bringing on more LCOs so they can speed up the installation process. So pretty cool stuff. Obviously getting usage, driving revenue. So pretty cool stuff. I'm a big fan of Dabba. You can get their hotspots. They have several different programs going right now. They actually have a combination with WeatherXM, so you can have a Dabba hotspot installed. WeatherXM stations will also be installed there. I'm not going to talk about WeatherXM today, but it will be a project I cover in the next couple of days because they're also doing some pretty cool stuff as well. This is another one that I've done a deep dive on, and I've interviewed their CEO. So if you want to learn more about Dabba Network, check it out. But I do think that this project has some serious potential. And when you look at like what Helium's done, for example, and Helium has been successful. They caught a lot of flack for a while there, but they're starting to get a lot of daily usage, and they're expanding pretty quickly. But the difference here is that I think Dabba is managing the install for you. Now, some people don't like that. It's not going to be for everyone. Some people don't trust, Joe being one of them. Some people don't trust that they're going to actually go and install these things. Okay. I mean, that's fine. There's plenty of projects for you if you want to be a deployer yourself. But for me, and I think a lot of people are in this camp, I'm freaking busy. Like, I've done the Helium thing. I got 70 rooftop installs out there. Then you have to like manage them, keep them up and running. People move. You have to get them removed from people's rooftops. Like, that's a lot of headache, man. So I know some people love it. For me, I've got too many irons in the fire at this point. I like the concept of being able to invest in the infrastructure, have it installed and managed for me, and not have the headache of having to maintain these rooftop installs. So that's just me personally. But I think there's going to be a huge subset of people. I think we're going to see this, especially in emerging countries. It's going to be this model now where you can very easily raise capital from all over the world to build an infrastructure like this. So I'm a big fan of the project myself. They also have X Spaces every Wednesday that you can hop on. I normally am on those as well. So worth tuning into those. But yeah, go ahead and follow them. And again, I think all the projects I've covered so far, I've interviewed their founder or CEO. So give those a watch if you want to learn more about these projects. We get into all the nitty-gritty details straight from the co-founder or CEO's mouth themselves. The last project I want to talk about is Exabits, guys. I think one of the big winners in the DePIN sector looking forward is going to be in the compute side of things. And tokenizing GPU compute in particular, especially as we see the AI movement continue to expand. We see AI agents, eventually AGI. Exabits to me is like my favorite GPU project, and there's a lot of them out there. You have your Renders, your Nosana, you have a Cache Network, IONET, Aether, you name it. To me, Exabits is the one that I'm most interested in having exposure to, and I'm going to explain why. And how it actually gets you exposure to a lot of the other GPU projects at the same time. So what they're doing is quite different from a lot of the other GPU projects. Some of the other ones I mentioned, a lot of times they'll have individual gamers that have a GPU that rent out from their home. The problem with that is it's really restrictive in what type of compute you have access to and what type of customer you can gain there. Because if you have people all over the world with individual GPUs with different latency and broadband connectivity, different types of GPUs, it's really hard to I mean, you could inference or run AI models, but training AI, you're extremely limited in what you can do above and beyond that. Exabits is building out legitimate data centers all over the world. In some cases, thousands of high-end NVIDIA GPUs. You can see here across the US, they not only have them in North America, they have some in Europe, they have some in Asia as well. Their team is stacked. They brought a lot of people from the Web 2 space over that know how these GPU data centers work. And it's not an easy task. There's cooling systems. There's fine tuning of the GPUs. You think about like what happened with DeepSeek, right? There's gonna be all these advancements when it comes to compute. They have the team that knows how to pull it together, guys. And when you look at the other projects that are sourcing from them, you have a cache network, you have Render, you have Aether, okay? IONET should be on here. There's IONET right there. So, you know, a lot of those other projects I mentioned, yeah, they're sourcing their own GPUs. They're kind of limited to inferencing. If these other groups want to be able to bring on Web 2 customers that are interested in training, because let's be real, right now, for AI startups, one of the biggest costs right now is GPU, resources. Their options are to go through your likes of AWS, your Google Clouds, very inflexible contract terms. A lot of those centralized entities are using the best resources internally. So it's a really big bottleneck and a really big problem for AI startups. Exabits is looking to change that by democratizing AI compute. It's also worth mentioning, like I said, that these other groups are sourcing from them. That's because they have these AI data centers. The other thing I'll say is that they have $12 million in annual reoccurring revenue already. That's a lot of revenue, guys. In December, they raised another $15 million on a $150 million valuation. Okay, Exabits is going to be a monster, in my opinion, in the space. The money's there. The backers are there. I think it's flying majorly under the radar. And their token launch is expected to happen in Q3. So one to definitely keep on your radar. And I think a lot of these GPU projects are going to do well. But to me, this one is differentiated from the rest. And because the other projects are sourcing from them, again, you get exposure to all those other projects by getting exposure to Exabits. So definitely my number one GPU project. What scent is the orange candle? Oh, what scent is that? It's apple cider, guys. Apple cider here. Good stuff. She said candle win. It's a good candle. But guys, those are my top 5 projects without token launches. It is DePIN week. The next 2 days, I'm going back out of town Thursday. Next 2 days, I'm gonna be covering a lot more projects. He said pumpkin spice latte, baby. Basic white girl season. I'm gonna be covering a lot more projects. In probably actually, I think I have like 20 more projects I want to cover in the next couple of days. I wanted to cover these today though, because I think these are super promising. They haven't had token launches yet. In a lot of cases, when projects haven't had their token launch yet, they're very much under the radar. Some of these you guys have probably heard of, but I think there's some of the more promising DePIN projects. And I love it. And let's see, DeEEP Network's generating revenue. Which other ones did I cover? Wingbits, I believe, already has revenue. 375 AI already has contracts in place. They're generating revenue. Exabits is generating revenue. Dabba is generating revenue. All of these are generating revenue that I mentioned without a token launch. That's not something we saw a couple of years ago. So I think we're starting to see the DePIN sector mature. And this is a big shift. And I think we're going to see a lot more projects go the same route. And I think it's going to be an easy way in the future to delineate which projects have real potential and which ones don't. Because I think some of the projects that launch a token prematurely, years before they have revenue, in my opinion, they're kind of setting themselves up to fail. And I'm not going to say that every project necessarily, but I think that there's something to be said about kind of getting things moving before the token launch happens. What do you think the market cap Exabits is going to be a TG? That's a great question, man. I mean, in December, it was valued at 150 million. Now, on one end, you have market conditions suck right now. But on the other end, like when I talked to their team guys, I asked them what their expectations for growth would be. And again, they had $12 million in annual revenue last year. They said they're targeting at minimum 5x to as much as 10x over the next year. So you do the math there. That's $60 to $120 million in revenue. That would put them up there as likely the highest revenue producing DePIN project right now. I will say Aether is claiming that they're up over 100 million. I don't think it's on chain. So I'm not saying that they're lying, but by any means, but I would like to see some on chain proof of that. But yeah, this is oh yeah. And again, let me pull this up real quick. Let me pull this up because I also interviewed Exabits CMO. So you guys need to check that out. That was a really cool interview. He talked about how AGI is coming. So I did a deep dive on their project. And really, it's a pretty good informational video. It talks about the whole supply chain of GPUs and how NVIDIA outsources to TSMC, who gets machines from ASML, and how the supply chain for these GPUs is really down to like 3 companies, which is pretty scary. Any of those were be taken out, it would like destroy our whole economy. But really, the main thing there is that there's extreme shortages of NVIDIA. But yeah, check that out. And then Mark Feidelman, that guy's really well accomplished too. He's got a really impressive work history, but really cool interview there, about 35 minutes. We get into some really interesting stuff. I mean, he actually predicts that there's going to be within the next 5 years, there's going to be $1 billion corporation that's run by an AI agent who the CEO is actually AI. It's not an actual person. And then the next 10 years, we're going to see buildings that are built using robotics. He's not the only one saying that, by the way. Mike Horton is also very bullish on robotics. You look at GeoNet, look at Rover. It's a project we'll be covering in the next couple of days. A lot of these projects are really ahead of the curve when it comes to the technological advancements we're going to see and the demand that's coming to these networks. So, guys, we are in the cutting edge in a lot of different ways. But again, yeah, check out those if you get a chance. Highly recommend watching. And then let's look at the oil prices. Where are we at? Ooh, it's continued to go down. 68.71. That's good for markets, guys. As long as we can keep the oil prices going down, that's a very good thing for markets. Very good thing. So let's go. Guys, if you have any projects you want me to cover, let me know. I mean, I have a number on my list that I need to still research, but there's only so much time in the day. But next 2 days, make sure to tune in. I'll be covering a lot more DePIN projects with a major emphasis on the fundamentals. Okay, not the token price, but the fundamentals. Because those are the projects when the market rebounds. You drown out the noise in the short term right now, but when the market rebounds, those are the projects that should flourish and do very well. I will say, we are very early, man. I know it's cliche to say, but when we're at Bitcoin 2025, keep in mind these are crypto people. Yeah, a lot of them were Bitcoin maxis. Virtually none of them had heard of DePIN. A couple had heard of Helium. They were like, "Whoa, is that still a thing?" Like, yeah, still a thing. So very early, a lot of building taking place, a lot of smart people working in the space, a lot of teams that are executing and revenue being generated. And I think it is the hidden gem of crypto. It's what crypto's been missing. Real world use cases and real revenue rather than just speculative investment. All right, y'all. That's what I got for today. Appreciate you guys. I'll be back tomorrow at the normal time. And we are going to get into more DePIN. and some global news. I'm sure there'll be stuff to cover there as well, but emphasis on DePIN this week. Appreciate y'all. Have a good day.